What if the person you spent 2 years loving never loved you back, but knew, from the very first moment, that you were already hers? And what if the day she finally decided to say yes was the exact day you decided you were done? This is the story of Ethan, a top academic at Tsinghua University. A guy who built his entire world around one person and then, piece by piece, took it all back. For 2 full years, Ethan pursued Lydia, the most sought-after girl on campus. The kind of beautiful that clears a hallway when she walks through it. He confessed his feelings to her 99 times. 99 times she said no, and 99 times he came back the next morning, quieter than the day before, more certain that eventually she would see what he saw. He ignored the whispers and the Carters, the laughing group who had started keeping count. He ignored the nickname that followed him from building to building, the guy who confessed 99 times and got nowhere. He told himself it was worth it. He told himself she was worth it. He cried alone in the dark more nights than he could remember, and every single morning he pulled himself together and went right back. He had even been on the verge of giving up the overseas exchange placement he had spent 3 years earning just to stay near her. That placement meant everything to him. Every all-nighter, every exam, every competition entry had been building toward it, and he was ready to throw it away for a girl who had never once asked him to stay. Then, one afternoon, everything changed. Ethan saw Lydia's phone by accident. Just a glance, just a second, and what he saw rewired something deep inside him. His contact name in her phone was not Ethan, not his last name, not some cold formal label. It read, "My darling husband." Her photo album held over 1,000 pictures of him, candid shots, close-ups, moments she had captured without him knowing, a private collection built across 2 years of watching him chase her. Any other person might have felt joy at that discovery. What Ethan felt instead was a slow, burning wave of fury and something that could only be called betrayal. She had known all along. From the very first moment they met, she had felt it, and instead of reaching back, she had chosen to string him along, rejection after rejection, playing a game that cost him his dignity and his peace and 2 years of his life. She had enjoyed the chase. She had enjoyed watching him suffer. That realization did not break Ethan. It set him free. The very next day, he walked into his advisor's office and secured his spot on the overseas study program. Without hesitation, Italy, 3 years, a clean break from everything Tsinghua University had become. But before he left, there was one last thing he needed to do. Lydia's birthday party. He had fought for weeks to get an invitation to that party, calling in favors from 6 people just to be allowed inside the door. He planned to go, say what needed to be said, and leave her world for good. What he did not plan was arriving to find the party already in full swing, and familiar voices carrying through the walls of the private room. "Why is he so late?" one of Lydia's friends was saying. "Don't tell me he went off to prepare some big surprise." "He's already confessed 99 times, said another. "Number 100 is right around the corner. Lydia, you really should say yes this time." And then came Lydia's voice, smooth and perfectly certain. "Ethan loves me too much to walk away. When he confesses again, I will say yes." Ethan stood in that hallway and let the words sink in. That tone, so self-assured, so utterly comfortable in her own power over him. He had expected to feel anger, or sadness, or the particular sting of humiliation he had grown so familiar with. Instead, he felt nothing but contempt. A next time, he thought, there will be no next time. He pushed open the door and stepped inside. Every conversation died instantly. The room went through a silent collective agreement. Eyes away. Talk elsewhere. Pretend you haven't seen him. Lydia picked up her drink and re-entered the game, her expression distant and cool, not even glancing in his direction. Ethan looked at her once and thought, what a performance. He walked calmly to an empty corner seat and sat down. For over an hour, the room laughed and talked around him while he scrolled his phone like a ghost no one could see. In the past, the moment Lydia entered any room, he would have found 3 different excuses to be at her elbow. But that version of him was already gone, and that unfamiliar stillness, the fact that he was sitting there looking relaxed, unbothered, indifferent, started getting under Lydia's skin. She found herself stealing glances at him without meaning to. When the birthday cake was cut and the gifts were presented, Ethan waited for everyone else to go first. Then he rose without hurry, reached into his bag, and placed a small calendar on the table in front of her. The room stared. It was barely the size of a palm, 30 pages, cheap-looking, almost laughably small. Ethan ignored every reaction. He looked directly at Lydia and spoke in a calm, even voice. "Tear off one page every day," he said. "When you reach the last one, there will be a surprise waiting." Her friends burst into laughter immediately. "So this is the countdown to confession number 100, is it? 2 years and still going. That takes serious dedication." Swayed by the teasing, Lydia let a faint smile ghost across her mouth, then pulled it back until her face was unreadable again. "I only said I would consider it if you reach 100 confessions," she said. "I never promised I would say yes." The room had gotten it completely wrong. The day she tore off the final page would not be the day Ethan confessed. It would be the day he disappeared from her life entirely. He said nothing to correct them. He simply smiled and asked, lightly, casually, "What is your ideal type, Lydia?" The question landed like a stone dropped into still water. The whole room went quiet and turned to watch her. Lydia parted her lips to answer, and then the door swung open. Julian walked in, Lydia's childhood companion, tall and clean-cut, carrying an elegantly wrapped gift with a wide smile already spread across his face. The room's center of gravity shifted immediately. Lydia's face softened into something warm and genuine, a look Ethan had never once received in 2 years of trying. "My ideal type," she said, without looking back at Ethan, "is someone cheerful, clean-cut, the boy next door kind." Julian had barely stepped through the door, and he was already at her side, pressing his gift into her hands, basking in her smile. And just like that, the earlier conversation dissolved, and no one gave it another thought. Ethan returned to his corner seat and watched. He had seen this performance before. Lydia and Julian had grown up in the same circles, but they had never actually been close, not until Ethan arrived on the scene. The closeness she performed with Julian, fixing his hair, walking him to class, defending him in front of other girls, all of it had been staged. Every small gesture had been a deliberate thorn driven into Ethan's chest, a calculated move to push him into chasing her harder. And watching her run the exact same play right now, in front of him, knowing what he knew, Ethan felt nothing but contempt. He set down his glass and excused himself to the bathroom. He was just drying his face when Julian's voice cut through the silence behind him. "You've been chasing Lydia for years and she still won't give you the time of day," Julian said. "And you still have the nerve to show up here? She does not like you. Everyone on campus calls you a simp. You're supposed to be a serious student. Have you no shame at all?" Ethan did not even turn around. He finished drying his face, folded the paper towel, and dropped it in the bin. Then he shifted his gaze to the doorway behind Julian. "Before you go any further," he said, "you might want to look behind you." Julian turned and found Lydia standing in the doorway, expression unreadable. Having heard every word, the bravado drained from Julian's face in an instant. He rushed to her, grabbing her arm, launching into explanations. Ethan started it. It was not what it looked like. Lydia did not even glance at him. She looked at Ethan once, then slipped off her jacket and draped it over Julian's shoulders. "It is windy out there," she said. "You're not dressed warmly enough. Don't catch a cold." She took Julian's hand and led him back toward the room. And Julian, emboldened by her indifference to his cruelty, threw Ethan one last mocking grin over his shoulder. Ethan did not chase it with his eyes. He balled up the damp paper towel, tossed it cleanly into the bin, and walked downstairs. In the quiet of the stairwell, he let out a short, humorless laugh. She had been staring directly at him when she draped that jacket over Julian, a genuinely impressive actress. Outside, heavy rain had pulled nearly every cab off the road. A cluster of partygoers stood stranded under the entrance awning, waiting out the downpour. Lydia called her family driver, announced she was taking Julian home, and left without a glance in Ethan's direction. Someone in the group murmured, "Is it really right to just leave Ethan standing here in the rain?" "He has legs," Lydia said. "He can manage." She got into the car and the taillights disappeared into the dark. Ethan stood in the cold and kept refreshing his ride-hailing app. 2 hours he waited. Only when the rain finally slowed did a driver accept his request. He got home at 2 in the morning, punched in his door code, and the moment his door swung open, the door across the hall opened too. "Come home earlier from now on," Lydia said from across the threshold. "The sound of your door disturbs my sleep." She was still wearing the exact same clothes from the party. Ethan understood immediately she had been awake the entire time, waiting, and this was the best version of concern she knew how to show. He gave a non-committal hum and went inside. A few seconds later, a loud slam rang out from across the hall. He paid it no attention. He changed into his pajamas, turned on the air conditioning, and curled up under a blanket on the sofa. This apartment, he had bought it 6 months ago specifically because he heard Lydia had moved out of the dormitories he had moved out to just to become her neighbor, just to engineer morning greetings and evening goodnight exchanges and accidental hallway meetings. He had brought her breakfast. He had offered warmth in 100 small ways she never once acknowledged, and she had pretended through all of it, just as she was pretending tonight. Still in her party clothes, unable to sleep, manufacturing a complaint as a reason to see his face. Ethan pulled out his phone, opened a real estate app, and listed the apartment for sale. If he was going to leave, he was going to make it a clean cut. The next morning, the real estate agent arrived to inspect the unit. Ethan walked her through the apartment, half asleep, and was showing her out when the door across the hall opened. Lydia stepped out with her car keys and stopped when she saw an unfamiliar woman standing at Ethan's door. Her brow furrowed. "Who is she?" "My sister-in-law," Ethan said, without missing a beat. "She came by to drop something off." The agent shot him a startled look, but she was a professional and covered without a word. Ethan changed and headed to campus. He turned the corner to find Lydia blocking the elevator. She had been on her way out moments ago, so why was she still here? "I will drive you to campus," she said, a little stiffly. He shook his head and declined. She pressed the offer again and again, cycling through excuses. "You will be late." "It is on my way," until Ethan simply ran out of patience and agreed. The entire drive passed in complete silence. She was so accustomed to him filling every quiet moment with something, a question, a joke, an attempt to make her smile, that this stillness unsettled her. Something about him had genuinely changed these past few days, and that change, for reasons she could not name, was beginning to frighten her. When they reached campus, Ethan unclipped his seatbelt, said a quick thanks, and was gone before she could say another word. He had barely stepped through the school gates when he noticed the stairs. Loaded, pitying, barely contained. "That is Ethan, right?" "Yes, the one trending online." How embarrassing. He pulled out his phone and found a string of links for friends waiting in his inbox. He tapped one open and felt the air leave his lungs. Someone had submitted the full story of his 2-year pursuit to a campus roast board, and it had gone viral overnight. The tag read, "Chengdu University's #1 simp." The top post documented every detail, every confession, every rejected letter. The full contents of each one reproduced in humiliating detail. From across the courtyard, he could already see the crowd gathered around the campus notice board, which was plastered from top to bottom with printed copies of his love letters. Laughter and commentary rippled through the crowd. "I am lost in your eyes," someone read aloud. "That is unbearable. 99 letters. Every single one dripping like this. Isn't he supposed to be the top academic talent here? How does someone that smart become such a simp?" Ethan walked straight through the crowd and tore the letters down one by one, working his way across the board without a word. By the time he reached the last one, Julian's sharp voice cut through from behind him. "Lydia," Julian called out loudly. "Ethan has confessed to you so many times. How much do you actually like him?" Lydia's voice was as cool as ever. She said one word, 0. The crowd erupted, with both of them present, and Ethan standing there holding the shredded remains of his own letters. The laughter grew louder and more gleeful. "Come on, Ethan, shouldn't you try harder? When is confession number 100 going to be? Let us all watch and give you some pointers." He stood there, his fingers white around the torn paper, words rising to his throat. He looked around at the crowd closing in with their pity and their amusement and their loaded stares. And he made a decision. He raised the torn letters high above his head like a signal flag and announced to the entire square, "Confession number 100, Central Square, December 3rd, 9 in the morning. All students welcome. Bring your friends." Without waiting to see anyone's reaction, he held his head high and walked away. He skipped his morning classes, went home, and burned every last letter to ash. That weekend, a student club meeting pulled him out of the apartment. He needed to hand in a resignation anyway, so he went. But when he pushed the door open, Lydia was already there. Lydia, who had never once attended a club gathering in living memory. Ethan acted as though he had not seen her and took a corner seat alone. Julian's friends immediately launched into their usual theater. Obviously, Lydia only shows up Because Julian loves a good time, everyone knows the campus beauty only ever listens to him. Ethan picked up a tangerine, started peeling it, and tuned them out completely. When the truth or dare game finally pulled him in, he dragged himself through 7 or 8 tedious rounds without much interest. Then Lydia lost. The room erupted. The campus beauty draws the dare. Kiss any male in the room for 3 minutes. Ethan already knew she would not choose him. He had not planned on caring. As expected, Lydia chose Julian, but with one condition: all the lights had to go out. The room went completely dark, nothing but the sound of breathing. 3 minutes later, the lights came back on. Lydia was already back in her seat. Julian stood alone, his expression sour. She had not kissed him. Ethan glanced at him briefly, then rolled his dice. 3 ones, the lowest possible score. He drew a card from the pile, without looking, and found himself staring at the exact same dare. Every eye in the room immediately bounced between him, Lydia, and Julian. Ethan ignored all of it. He flicked the spinner casually and watched the needle settle on a junior student sitting across from him. The room went tense with assumption. He apologized to the junior student. As she was just getting to her feet when Lydia shot up abruptly and kicked over her stool. "We have been at this long enough," Lydia announced. "I am tired. Time for a break." Her roommates chimed in immediately. The president had no choice but to call an intermission. During the break, most of the group filtered downstairs for snacks, and 20 minutes later, when the game resumed, every woman in the room had vanished except Lydia. Ethan did not need to guess whose work that was. He picked up the glass in front of him, raised it to the room, and said evenly, "My partner has left, so per the rules, I will take the drinking penalty instead." He tipped his head back and drained the entire glass without flinching. Lydia had not expected him to choose alcohol over her. Her expression darkened. She stared at his flushing face with cold, heavy eyes, squeezing the dice in her palm until they clicked. The gathering fell apart not long after. Ethan, pleasantly drunk, handed his resignation letter to the club president and made his way toward the staircase. He had barely reached the top step when Julian grabbed his arm from behind, eyes blazing. "That look you gave me when the lights came on, what was that supposed to mean?" "Let me tell you something. The fact that Lydia did not kiss me only means one thing. She respects me too much to do it in front of everyone." Ethan nearly laughed. He knew nothing he said would land, so he simply nodded. "Sure. You are absolutely right." He moved to pull his arm free, but Julian held tighter and kept pushing. The struggle, the tug, the off-balance stumble, and then Ethan went tumbling backward down the stairs. Julian lurched in shock, lost his footing, and came rolling down after him. The sound brought people running. Seeing them both badly injured at the bottom of the staircase, the room panicked. It was Lydia who took charge, arranging for both of them to be rushed to her family's hospital. The examination confirmed bone fractures for both. Without prompt surgery, the doctor said, there was a real risk of permanent disability. There was one surgeon on duty capable of performing the procedure. Lydia had to choose who went in first. From the moment she found them at the bottom of those stairs, her eyes had not left Ethan. She watched his ashen face, the sweat rolling steadily down his forehead. It looked as though she could feel every second of his pain herself. But when the moment of choice arrived, she looked at him and found him already looking back. There was no warmth in his eyes, no longing, just a flat, still calm, like water with nothing underneath it. That look sent a sharp shudder through her chest. "Miss, please decide quickly," the nurse urged. In the last second, before Ethan lost consciousness, he heard Lydia's voice ring out with absolute clarity. "Julian," she said, "save Julian first." The operating room door swung shut, and Ethan's world went dark. When he came to, a full day had passed. His first instinct was to reach down and feel his leg. When he felt it there, intact, sensation still present, he exhaled slowly and tears came without warning. Pure relief. He still had use of his leg. His parents arrived shortly after and had him moved to a private suite on the top floor, where they looked after him carefully. 2 hours later, Julian was placed in the room directly across the hall. Lydia walked him and herself, arm linked through his. Both room doors were kept open for the medical staff, giving Ethan a clear view of everything happening across the corridor. Julian complained constantly about the pain. Lydia kept finding new topics to distract him when the hospital food did not suit him. She went home and prepared light, easy-to-digest dishes from scratch. When he complained of boredom, She arrived with a steady stream of novelties and entertainment. Over 10 days, the two of them were so visibly close that the nurses began gossiping, speculating about whether the hospital director was about to gain a son-in-law. Ethan listened quietly and said nothing. He had closed his room door well over 100 times, and every single time a nurse appeared almost immediately to check on him. Far too consistent to be coincidence. Every bit of that warmth across the hall was staged for his benefit, and he felt nothing watching it. On the day of discharge, Julian offered Ethan a lift from the underground garage. Ethan got in without looking up. When the car pulled up to the building, he declined help and made his way home alone on crutches. In the elevator, Lydia stepped in on the ground floor, despite being supposed to drive Julian elsewhere. They looked at each other briefly. Neither said a word. The elevator stopped at the 17th floor. Lydia stood at the threshold and made no move to leave. Ethan maneuvered past her on his crutches and walked slowly toward his door. He could feel her eyes on his back the entire way. When he reached his door and went to enter the code, his crutch slipped and clattered to the floor. He braced against the wall and lowered himself carefully. A shadow fell over him. Lydia had crouched down beside him, reaching for the crutch. But the moment their eyes met, she drew her hand back and busied herself tying a shoelace that had come undone. Ethan let out a quiet, sardonic laugh. He picked up the crutch himself, hauled himself to his feet, and went inside. After a long recovery, end-of-term exams arrived. His leg was recovered enough to manage the walk, so he went in and sat the exam. The lecture hall stairs were difficult with his injury, so he took a seat in the front row of the middle section. Not long after, Lydia walked in supporting Julian, and the moment Julian spotted Ethan, he immediately complained his leg was hurting and insisted on sitting in the front row too. Lydia helped him into the seat beside Ethan, then took the spot against the wall herself. The exam began. The moment the invigilator descended the last step of the aisle, Julian flicked a pre-prepared paper ball across the gap and onto Ethan's desk. Ethan's hand still on his pen. The invigilator spun around. I made it absolutely clear before this exam, the invigilator snapped. You may perform poorly, but your integrity is non-negotiable. Cheating will not be tolerated. Ethan, your results are void. Only then did Ethan understand what Julian had been building toward. He stood immediately and demanded they review the security footage. But the building had lost power that morning, and the classroom cameras had never come back online. Watching Julian's expression shift from alarm to quiet satisfaction, Ethan could barely hold his composure. The invigilator, not wanting to be unjust, called Lydia forward. The academic buildings at Qingda had been funded by Lydia's family. Her reputation for fairness was unimpeachable. Her word, among both students and faculty, carried absolute weight. She had seen everything, every detail, with her own eyes. After hearing the full account, Lydia raised her eyes and looked at Ethan for a moment. Then she said, calmly and evenly, Julian was not the one cheating. Those words landed like a verdict, and the room closed in around Ethan. Ethan, the invigilator said, what is there left to argue? You cheat, you deny it, and then you try to blame a classmate. This incident will be formally reported to the entire university. Ethan stood there as something cold settled through him. He had invoked Lydia's name because he believed that when it truly mattered, she would stand on the side of what was right. He had not imagined she would give false testimony for Julian, having watched everything happen with her own eyes. There was nothing left to say. He held Lydia's gaze for one long moment, then walked out without a word. She saw his reddened eyes and something in her faltered. She rushed after him, stepped into his path. Ethan, I know Julian was wrong, she said, but he is sensitive. I did not want people talking about him. Not a single apology, just excuses on Julian's behalf. So that is your justification for slandering me, Ethan said. He cannot handle being talked about. But I can, Lydia. Do you think that because I have confessed to you 99 times I must have skin thick as a wall? Lydia's composure cracked. She reached out and took his hand. It is just one exam, she said. You can make up the credits. I will find a way to make this right. What happened today? Make it right. You do not even like me. What exactly do you plan to do? The sarcasm hit somewhere she had not expected, and the truth nearly slipped out of her. Who said I do not? She caught herself mid-sentence and stopped. Trust me, she said instead. When the 100th confession comes, I will make things right. She had come within a breath of promising she would say yes. But Ethan pulled his hand free. Then keep tearing those pages, he said, Wait for the last one. Lydia stood there watching him pull away, and for the first time, her voice softened. 3 days left, she said quietly. I promise I will give you an answer you will be happy with. 3 days before his departure, the apartment sold. The agent came by with the contract, and Ethan signed without hesitation. In 3 days, he would be gone. These last few days, he would clear everything out and leave nothing behind. He was showing the agent to the elevator when the doors opened, and Lydia stepped out carrying the shopping bags. She studied the agent for a moment, then smiled politely and said good morning. After the elevator closed, Lydia held out one of the bags. I was passing by and ended up buying too much, she said. Want some? He glanced inside. Candy and dried fruit, his favorite brand, from a shop on the east side of the city, over 2 hours round trip with an hour-long queue on top. She had gone out of her way to get something she knew he loved, then invented a reason to hand it to him. He took the bag without a word, went inside, and tossed it cleanly into the bin. 2 days before he left, Ethan went to a print shop and spent several thousand yuan printing 10,000 palm-sized cards. He went back to the dormitory and asked a few of his old roommates to climb to the roof of the main building on the 3rd and scatter the cards down onto the square below. His roommates had heard everything that had happened, assuming he still could not let go. They urged him to reconsider. Come on, after everything she put you through, why keep doing this to yourself? Ethan had already made his peace with everything, but hearing them care like that still brought a quiet warmth to his chest. Don't worry, he said. I know what I'm doing. Just scatter them for me. I have already hired a cleaning crew, and I am not confessing. What I am actually doing is saying goodbye. That stopped them cold. They stared at him, trying to figure out what he was really up to, and watched him walk away. One of them reached into the box and pulled out a card to read what was printed there. 5 words. Ethan will never love Lydia again. The day before he left, Ethan went to campus to complete the remaining formalities, then came home and began packing. He had only been in the apartment 6 months, but almost everything he owned was connected to Lydia in some way. The scarf he had spent 2 weeks knitting for her, he cut it into loose threads. The ceramic vase she had donated to a charity auction, which he had gone to extraordinary lengths to buy back, he smashed it to pieces. Every love letter written through sleepless nights fed into the shredder. The moment all of it hit the bin, everything between them would become the past. In the end, only 2 pieces of clothing remained. The shirt she was wearing the first time they met, a pair of loose black jeans. He struck a match and burned them both. He stood up and found Lydia not far away, watching in silence. I am just clearing out some things I no longer need, Ethan said. And with that, he turned and went upstairs. That same night, he was woken at dawn by a flood of notifications, all of them from a group chat of around 20 people. A year ago, wanting to learn more about Lydia's tastes, he had quietly added himself to the group and simply never left. She had no idea he was there. The ones flooding the chat were Lydia's dormitory friends. You were up this early, Lydia. Don't tell me you were too excited to sleep. Obviously she has been restless since 11 last night. So, are you really going to say yes to Ethan's confession this time? His thumb paused on the screen. Below, he saw something rare. Lydia had typed out a long reply. It is not about saying yes, she had written. We have always had feelings for each other. This is just things falling into place the way they were always meant to. Stop asking obvious questions and help me pick an outfit. The chat exploded with amazed reactions. Is this really the same Ice Queen who swore off all men? Amid the flood of comments, Lydia sent one more line. I love him. There's no one else. Not in this lifetime. Ethan read those words and laughed out loud, a short, humorless sound. So many memories surfaced at once, every rejection, every public humiliation. The false testimony in the exam hall, Julian's mocking grin over his shoulder. She loves him. So she rejected his confessions 99 times and made him the laughingstock of the entire campus. She loves him, so she staged closeness with another man over and over, just to provoke him. She loves him, so she twisted the truth and trampled on every sincere thing he had ever offered her. If that was what her love looked like, he wanted no part of it. The group chat kept filling with photos from the square. It was barely past 7, and the crowd was already forming. Everyone's here for the 100th confession. Lydia, get here soon. You won't be able to push through the crowd. A private message appeared from Lydia. I am heading out now. What about you? He was heading out to just not in the direction she expected. He found himself briefly wishing he could see her face when those cards rained down, but he would not be there to see any of it. From this day forward, everything about Lydia was no longer his concern. He finished packing at an unhurried pace, took one last look at the bare empty room, then pulled out his phone and blocked every number and account connected to her. When it was done, he felt lighter than he had in years. He picked up his suitcase, turned his back on the room, and walked toward a bright and brand new life. 5 minutes to 9, and the square below the main building was already an impenetrable sea of people. Security guards had been deployed across the grounds just to manage the crowd. From the rooftop, Ethan's roommates looked down at the scene with wide eyes and an odd, thrumming excitement. With this many people, whatever happened next would be all over campus within the hour. Good, one of them muttered. That way, even after Ethan is gone, no one can keep talking about him behind his back. At 8:59, one of them looked at his phone. Ethan's already at the airport. Let's move. Everyone scatter the cards. Take photos. We need him to see this before his plane takes off. The 9 o'clock alarm sounded. Two of them pushed the thick stacks of cards off the ledge. In an instant, a blizzard of white paper cascaded down from the 16th floor, catching the morning air, spinning and drifting like snow. Down in the square, someone with poor eyesight looked up and called out, "It is snowing." The crowd surged forward on tiptoe, snatching at cards as they neared the ground, craning to read what was printed there. At the center of the square, Lydia stood looking up, her heart already swelling with something she could not quite name. Her friends clicked their tongues in admiration. How many are there? 10,000. Ethan really pulled out all the stops. Lydia reached up and caught a card as it drifted past. She turned it over with a small, expectant smile. The moment she read the words printed there, every expression left her face. Her friends leaned in, ready to tease her, and then they saw the words too, and their voices came out halting. This cannot be right. There must be some mistake. They picked up more cards from the ground and pressed them into her hands. But every new card read the same 5 words in identical printed type. Ethan will never love Lydia again. They grabbed cards from the hands of bystanders. Same words. Every single one. The crowd around them erupted. Well, Ethan will never love Lydia again. So this was not a confession at all. He got the whole campus here just to make this announcement. With each new wave of reaction, the color drained slowly from Lydia's face. Something lodged itself in her chest, cutting off the air to her lungs, leaving only a vast blank emptiness. She let everything in her hands fall and strode toward the main building with quick, urgent steps. The crowd surged after her. Upstairs on the rooftop, Ethan's roommates were just heading for the door when Lydia appeared in front of them, her friends close behind, and seconds later the crowd came flooding up the stairwell. Well, if it isn't Shinga's campus beauty, one of the roommates said lightly. Didn't you say Ethan wasn't good enough for you? What brings you to this particular bit of excitement? Lydia's hands balled into fists. You scattered these yourselves. On your own initiative? The words "on your own initiative" set all three of them laughing. We would not dare act on our own, one of them said. Ethan paid for every single one of these himself, had them printed, and brought them here. We were just the delivery crew, helping him close a chapter. Below, the murmur spread through the crowd. Didn't Lydia say she didn't like Ethan? So why does she look like she can't accept this? In every romance novel, someone said, this is called the untouchable ice queen knocked off her pedestal, now chasing the guy she once scorned. If she is regretting it now, she brought this on herself. Where was all this feeling during the previous 99 times? Every speculative word struck Lydia like something sharp. For 2 years she had been utterly convinced she knew Ethan completely, that she could read and control his every thought and move. And for a while, things had unfolded exactly as she planned. All 99 confessions had played out just as she had expected. She had been certain the 100th would bring it all to a perfect close, a happy ending for both of them. Instead, at the very moment she was most certain of her victory, he had delivered a public, devastating blow. She could no longer hold up the composed, indifferent front she had always worn. Where is Ethan? She demanded. The roommate looked at her expression and let a gleeful smile spread across his face. He raised both arms and mimicked wings taking flight. The confession is over, he said. Of course he flew. Lydia's instinct was to dismiss it as a taunt, but when those last 2 words landed, her heart stopped for several seconds. Flew? What do you mean? Cold dread rose through her. She shoved past the guys blocking the way and ran for the stairs. The stairwells and elevator were completely choked with people. There was no way down. The realization hit her like a wall, helpless and already too late. Eventually, security cleared the crowd, and Lydia was ushered downstairs by her friends. Outside, 7 or 8 sanitation workers were already sweeping up the scattered cards. She bent down in a daze and picked up a card that had been stepped on until it was barely legible. She read the words again, and this time they hit her differently. The anger and shock had given way to something boundless, pure panic and a fear she had no name for. "It is all right," her friend said quickly. "Ethan pulling a stunt like this, of course he is still upset about the exam incident. Just go back, explain yourself properly, get everything out in the open. He likes you so much. He is just throwing a fit, a little coaxing, and he will come around." But Lydia's gut told her this time was different. She could not shake the dread creeping up inside her. She drove straight back to the apartment. She needed answers from him, directly. At 10:30, she parked and walked toward the building entrance. She noticed the sanitation workers clearing out the bins, and it triggered a memory. Yesterday, she had spotted Ethan crouching on the ground burning something. She had sensed something was off, but never got a straight answer. She headed upstairs, card still in hand. The elevator doors opened, and she found herself blocked by several large boxes of luggage. A young man apologized and rushed to clear the way. She assumed a new neighbor had just moved into one of the nearby units. But when she reached her own door and noticed the door across the hall was slightly ajar, something made her pause. She knocked. Silence. She was about to push it open when a voice came from behind her. "Are you the neighbor from across the hall? I just moved into Unit 1-7-0-5. 1-7-0-5. The moment she heard those numbers, Lydia glanced at the door sign, and in the next second froze completely. The young man kept cheerfully introducing himself. She did not hear a single word. "Where's the original tenant?" she asked, mechanically. The agent said he moved out this morning. The young man said the listing price was well below market. "I snagged it at a steal. If you know him, could you pass along his contact? I just wanted to thank him." A few short sentences, and Lydia's mind went completely blank. She stepped to the side and shoved the door open. The apartment was empty. Beyond the standard furnishings, not a single personal item remained, as spotless and bare as a show unit. The young man, not noticing her face slowly draining of color, kept grinning. "Clean, right?" The agent mentioned the previous tenant spent 3 days packing, and even threw away a lot of things he couldn't take. Lydia had no idea how she made it back inside her own apartment. When she came to, she was collapsed in the entryway, legs completely numb, her whole body feeling as though it had just been dragged out of water. She pulled out her phone, found Ethan's contact, and tapped with trembling fingers. "Why did you move out?" The moment she hit send, a small red dot appeared on the screen. "Blocked." She stared at it for a moment, then sent another message, same notification, then another, same result. She felt as though something was lodged in her throat, cutting off her breath entirely. Then her phone rang. She exhaled and answered. Her roommate's panicked voice filled her ear. "Lydia, this is bad. Ethan's gone to Italy. I am at the bulletin board right now. His name is on the exchange student list." Those words hit like a thunderclap. Lydia tried to push herself up against the cabinet, but her legs refused to cooperate. She pitched forward and her forehead caught the corner of the wall, splitting open. Blood welled up immediately. Her phone lay nearby, crackling with frantic voices. "What happened? We are on our way." Lydia could no longer process the words. She pressed her hand to the wound, her head screaming with a gnawing, relentless pain. She curled into herself as darkness closed in around her. In her final moment of consciousness, the words she had read 100 times that morning were seared into her mind. Ethan will never love Lydia again. Her injuries were severe. She narrowly held onto her life and was rushed into intensive care. When she finally woke, 3 days had passed. Her friends were gathered around the bed, visibly relieved, and began filling her in. According to what they had found out, Ethan had arrived in Italy 3 days ago, but still had not completed his enrollment. Apparently, after the exchange list was posted, someone had filed an anonymous complaint against him at the school, claiming he cheated on an exam and should have his spot revoked. If the spot got canceled, he would most likely have to come back. "Don't worry, Lydia. He is not going anywhere." Lydia's heart lurched. Her eyes flew open. She was still processing everything when a knock came at the door. In walked Professor Lin, expression grim, authority so commanding that no one in the room dared meet his eyes. "You are Lydia. I hear you were behind the plagiarism incident involving Ethan and Julian. I would like a word." Her friend slipped out of the ward without a sound. Lydia watched the door close and raised her chin. "It was me," she said. Professor Lin's face flooded with fury. "Ethan told me you fabricated evidence," he said, his voice dropping to a deliberate, heavy weight. "Do you have any idea what you have done to his future? Once that documentation is processed, combined with the public backlash he already faced because of you, it will follow him everywhere. You will have ruined his entire life. He cared for you, but has he done a single thing to wrong you in 2 years? Do you hate him so much that you will not stop until you have destroyed him? If you have even a shred of decency left, go to the school right now and tell them the truth." Lydia's head was ringing. Panic flooded through her in an instant. She had only done it out of spite, angry that Ethan had not chosen her during the club game, lying to the supervisor just to force him to make peace with her. She had never imagined it would set off a chain reaction of this magnitude. She no longer thought about her wound. She struggled to her feet, insisting on going to the school immediately. The medical staff blocked the door, pleading with her. She didn't hear a word. She went back to campus anyway. Professor Lin had already arranged a meeting with the head of the disciplinary committee, in front of the dean of the design school and the exam supervisor. Lydia stood before them and named Julian as the one who had cheated. Julian did not see the reversal coming. He panicked instantly, bursting into tears and denying everything. Lydia's expression stayed cold. She unlocked her phone and pulled up a photo. "This is a letter Julian wrote to me by hand," she said. "My family will bring the original shortly. Compare the handwriting with the exam note." Julian's denial turned to desperate sobbing. "Lydia, it is me, Julian. Have you forgotten we grew up together? Why are you doing this?" A flash of contempt crossed her eyes. "I never liked you," she said. "Everything before was just an act. I am done performing now, so I am certainly not going to cover for you. You did this, own it, all the way to the end." The words had barely left her mouth when her family arrived with the original letter. The handwriting was confirmed to be Julian's. The disciplinary committee convened immediately and issued a school-wide correction. Given the severity of the misconduct, Julian was expelled and the incident entered permanently into his academic record. By the time everything was resolved, night had fallen. Lydia steadied herself against the wall and called out to Professor Lin. "Does Ethan know what has been happening back here?" Professor Lin looked at her without warmth. "He was nearly expelled. Of course he knows. Did that fall damage your brain?" The scolding stung, but she pressed on. "Now that everything is cleared up, will he come back?" "That spot is the only one in the entire design school," Professor Lin said. "Ethan earned it on merit. 3 solid years of study in Italy will open every door for him. Why would he come back? Besides, with someone like you still at Tsinghua University, staying away saves him the grief. If I had known he would lose his head over someone like you, I would have talked some sense into him from the start." The words landed with full force, and Lydia said nothing. Meanwhile, Ethan was stretched out sunbathing by the sea. Professor Lin's call came through to tell him everything was fine, and he thanked him from the bottom of his heart. He took a sip of juice, eased back into his beach chair, and let the afternoon sun do its work. 3 days ago, he had arrived in Italy and discovered his enrollment was on hold due to an anonymous complaint. Back home, he had reached out to Professor Lin, explained the situation, and then, with the calm of someone who had learned to carry pressure without cracking, booked a last-minute flight to the coast for a little holiday while the matter was sorted. He had prepared himself for the worst, but even staring down the possibility of losing everything he had worked toward, he had stayed completely still. Lydia had given him that, at least. His ability to handle pressure had gone up considerably. He scrolled through flight options back to Milan when a message popped up in the dormitory group chat. "Ethan, Lydia just came by looking for us. She says she wants your contact info. She claims she wants to apologize. We are not falling for it. We did not give her a single digit. You should see her. She looks absolutely wrecked. There is bandaging all around her head. Apparently, she was in intensive care just a couple of days ago." Reading their vivid commentary, Ethan immediately pictured the scene, Lydia being turned away flat when she asked for his number. The corner of his mouth curled into a small smile. He dropped a generous payment into the group chat. Thank you all for having my back these past few days. Everything has been sorted. When my 3 years are up, dinner is on me. He booked the next flight back to Milan, stretched leisurely, and got to his feet. The enrollment process this time went smoothly. Not a single hitch. He looked down at the stamped stack of documents and the brand new student ID in his hands, and let out a satisfied smile. He had already purchased a small apartment near campus before the trip, unwilling to deal with the chaotic social environment of the international student dorms. He grabbed his suitcase and headed there directly. When he arrived at the building and saw the staircase in front of him, he let out a long sigh. He was still weighing whether to pay someone to help when a voice came from beside him. A beautiful young woman asked in English if he needed a hand. He nodded quickly, and she, Sophia, helped him carry the luggage up, chatting pleasantly as they went. By the time they reached his door, they had just finished exchanging introductions. Sophia held out her reddened palms with a grin. "I just did you a favor. A simple thank you isn't quite enough, is it? Would you mind giving me one of your business cards?" Ethan rummaged through his things and came up empty. "No worries," she said, producing a pen from seemingly nowhere and extending the back of her hand. "Your number, if you wouldn't mind, right here." He hesitated for a moment, then took the pen and wrote out a long string of digits on her hand. In the days that followed, Ethan explored the city, arranged the apartment, and gradually settled in. Word came that all exchange students in his cohort had checked in, and there was a welcome ceremony. The next morning, he headed out early and got lost almost immediately. The university was enormous, and every building looked remarkably alike. With time running out, he was just about to ask someone for directions when his phone rang from an unfamiliar number. He answered, heard a vaguely familiar voice, and then felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned around and found Sophia grinning at him with her phone still held to her ear. "What are you daydreaming about?" she said. He told her honestly about the predicament. She laughed and said she was heading to the same ceremony and would lead the way. They wove through the labyrinthine campus together, laughing and talking the whole route. The welcome ceremony ran to hours. By the time Ethan stepped out, his back was stiff and his mind was already on lunch. Sophia appeared in front of him smiling, recommended a nearby restaurant, and invited him to join. He followed her out of campus and realized it was a Chinese restaurant. "You want to take me to a Chinese restaurant?" he said with a flicker of surprise. "Can you handle it?" "I had been wanting to try it," she said, "and I wanted today's lunch to be a pleasant experience for you." The meal turned out to be genuinely enjoyable. Sophia's lively and considerate personality made it easy to talk. They drifted from Eastern and Western cultural differences into all the interesting things happening around campus, and before long they were chatting like old friends. After lunch, Sophia walked him back to his apartment, and her expression turned a little reluctant at the door. "Would you do me the honor of joining me for afternoon tea this weekend?" The weekend brought rare, perfect weather. Ethan showed up happily, and they settled into a relaxed conversation at the garden cafe. A flock of white doves drifted in from the lake. A feather floated down and landed on his head. Sophia noticed and laughed, leaning in to brush it away. They were close enough that from a distance the scene looked quite intimate. "Thank you," Ethan said, looking up at her with a smile in his eyes. The words had barely left his lips when his peripheral vision caught something, and his gaze locked in place. A woman in the doorway, head wrapped in bandages, face hollow and exhausted. She looked just like Lydia. Before he could look more carefully, the woman was already bearing down on them. She lowered her bloodshot eyes and surveyed the table. Her gaze darted between the two of them. "Who is she?" That voice, Ethan confirmed it immediately. This was Lydia. He had always known she would follow him to Italy eventually. In her mind, he was prey she already owned. She would never allow him to slip out from under her watch. He had been ready for this reunion. So when she came at him with that hostile tone, he stayed completely composed. "A new friend," he said. "Friend? Girlfriend? Is she your girlfriend?" The last few words came out through gritted teeth. She had dragged herself here half-wounded across thousands of miles, ready to lay everything bare, and walk straight into what looked like a date. "You forgot something," Ethan said, before she could dredge up the past. "Chasing after you wasn't exactly my proudest chapter. Why shouldn't I forget it? Beyond your looks, there's nothing particularly remarkable about you. I'd have moved on. If I want to explore other options, do I need your permission?" The words hit Lydia like cold water to the face. "Ethan, what happened to you these past few days? We had an agreement." "I'd have been great, actually, he said easily, eating well, sleeping well. I even had time for a little vacation. You, on the other hand, showing up out of nowhere. That I am not pleased about. If you can take a hint, please leave this cafe. You are interrupting my time with Sophia. The casual dismissal drained what little color was left in Lydia's face. I was wrong before, she said, voice trembling. I should not have used your feelings against you. I am sorry, Ethan. Please forgive me. Just give me one more chance. He glanced at her trembling hands, raised an eyebrow, and let a note of sarcasm into his voice. I am not worthy of an apology from the campus beauty. Don't worry. We are strangers from here on out. You don't need to lose any sleep over me coming after you. She saw the resolve in his eyes and understood he was not bluffing. Panic surged through her, and without thinking she grabbed his hand, gripping hard enough to make him wince. Sophia, who had not understood a word of their exchange, saw his hand going red from the grip and quickly stood to intervene. To Lydia, that was a provocation. Without a second thought, she shoved Sophia's hand away. Sophia stumbled back a few steps. Sophia steadied herself against the wall, then slapped Lydia across the face. The two women were at each other in an instant. Customers poured toward the exits. The owner called the police without delay. Officers pulled them apart and brought them both back to the station. Lydia's head bandages had been ripped off in the struggle, exposing the raw wound beneath. The officers visibly recoiled. They instinctively assumed Sophia had been assaulting someone already injured. Both women argued for what felt like half the day, and no clear resolution emerged as to who had thrown the first blow. With no other option, the officer turned to the only eyewitness present. Sir, could you please describe what you witnessed at the scene? Both women turned in unison, their urgent stares fixed on Ethan. He did not hesitate. He raised his hand and pointed directly at Lydia. She pushed first. Lydia went rigid, unable to believe he had named her. Her voice trembled. I just pushed her once. She is the one who hit me. Ethan, why would you? The sentence broke off. A flash of clarity cut through her. She understood exactly why he had said what he said. He was paying her back. He wanted her to know what it felt like to be falsely accused. The officer asked Ethan to translate. He kept things simple and factual. I was having lunch with Sophia. This woman barged in, caused a disturbance, tried to forcibly take me away, and then shoved Sophia. That is what triggered the fight. Lydia's voice rasped. You will never stand on my side again, will you? I am an honest person, he said, with a cool smile. I stand on the side of the truth. The truth was confirmed quickly through security footage. Lydia was detained for causing a disturbance as a foreign national. Ethan waited for Sophia to be released, offered his thanks and his apologies, and politely declined her suggestion to plan something for next week. He was no longer the kind of person who acted on impulse, and he did not want to drag Sophia into more trouble. He walked away from the police station and did not look back. For the next month and a half, Lydia was absent from his life entirely. Sophia reached out twice more, but after Ethan declined again, things between them quietly faded to nothing, and he felt no particular sadness over it. He settled into a steady rhythm, cooking, studying, making friends among the international student crowd. Just as he was nearly forgetting Lydia existed, she appeared again, this time with several carloads of rose balloons blocking his path on campus, demanding his attention in front of a crowd of curious onlookers. Ethan, she said, if I pursue you 100 times, will you give me another chance? A few months ago, those words might have broken him down. Now they made his skin crawl. He looked past her and waved at someone in the distance. A group of friends named Chloe and Yuki were heading out. Lydia followed his gaze and realized he was waving at someone else entirely. Her heart plummeted. Chloe walked over, tone warmly familiar, inviting him along for a camping trip. The weather was clear, the weekend was open, and there was a very inconvenient problem standing right in front of him. He agreed immediately, asked about the evening's plans, and walked off with the group without once looking back at Lydia. She followed them all the way out to the countryside, across a river. She had a clear view of everything. 7 or 8 students gathered in lively celebration, warm and spirited. She had no way in. She could only watch from afar, and the more she watched, the heavier her chest became, because no matter what Ethan did, Chloe was at his side, the distance between them never more than 10 paces, and shrinking. She wanted to march over and pull him away, but she knew it would only make him angrier. She forced herself to do nothing. She swallowed down the burning tangle of emotions and told herself to endure. She endured for 6 hours, until the sky darkened and a bonfire was lit on the other side of the river. When Ethan slipped away to the riverbank alone for a breath of air, she seized the moment and walked over. "Ethan, I'd have something to say to you." "I would rather not, honestly," he said, and turned to leave. She grabbed his hand. "Just a few minutes. There are things I have been wanting to say for a very long time." He finally looked at her. "A very long time." "Like what? That you fell for me at first sight 2 years ago?" The mockery in his voice was unmistakable, and Lydia went rigid as if struck. She had never imagined that the secret she thought she had buried so carefully could be spoken aloud by him, so easily and so coldly. "Lydia," he continued, his voice steady and deliberate, "think about it. If those words were said out loud, not just to me, but to anyone, even yourself, would you actually believe them? What kind of secret feeling stays perfectly hidden for the full years without a single leak? Who turns down the person they are supposedly in love with 99 times in public, just to protect their own ego? And who, at every single moment of crisis or pain, consistently shoves the person they claim to love straight into the opposing corner? Is that love? It sounds a lot more like hatred to me." Lydia's mind went blank. She desperately wanted to deny it all, but not a single rebuttal came to her. "Everyone around me knows I liked you," she said weakly. "They can all vouch for me." "Since I had no idea," Ethan said, "how was who you liked any of my business from where I stood? The person you cared about from start to finish was Julian. Go tell him all about your undying devotion." The undisguised disgust on his face was the last thing Lydia could take. Her body shook, but she refused to let go of his hand. He pulled it free without effort and walked back to the group with a light step. The instant their hands parted, something in Lydia gave way, a dull, crushing ache spreading through her chest, all the strength draining out of her at once. He did not look back. She had assumed that once everything had been said, she would finally give up. She was proven wrong. For the next several months, she could not take no for an answer. Anytime Ethan stepped outside, she was within 20 meters. Every few days she arrived with some elaborate gesture, calling it a confession of love. Once, twice, by the third time, he had stopped counting. Faced with her single-minded obsession, he gave her nothing, ignoring her when he could, and when he could not, calling security and having her removed for disrupting the peace. Word spread quickly. Before long, the entire campus knew who Lydia was and knew all about her relentless pursuit. Wherever she went, people pointed and whispered. She did not seem to care. Her eyes stayed fixed on his back, but reality had other plans. Not only did Ethan show no sign of being moved, he accepted the attention of other women right in front of her without hesitation. Slowly, painfully, Lydia began to grow accustomed to seeing him surrounded by admirers. She reluctantly admitted to herself that he had been right. He was never her property to keep. After rejection upon rejection, she went numb. She counted each attempt from 1 to 50. As winter turned to spring and spring faded into early summer, she assumed the days would continue in that dull pattern, 50 to 100, maybe even 101. Then, on an ordinary afternoon, Ethan appeared in front of her holding a woman's hand, smiling as he introduced her to the people around them as his girlfriend. In that moment, Lydia felt the sky caving in. She charged forward to confront him, but before she got close, the security guard stepped into her path. From behind the barrier, her eyes blazing red, she screamed, "Why?" Ethan's gaze rested on her for just a second. His voice was utterly flat. "I am young, I have money, and I have all the time in the world. What is wrong with dating someone beautiful? Does that somehow inconvenience you?" Lydia fell apart for a long time after that. She drank alone at bars night after night until she could barely stand. Every morning she woke to an empty room and slid helplessly back into the pain. Only now did she truly understand what it felt like, what he must have felt, every single day. For 2 full years, she ignored every plea from friends and family and insisted on staying abroad, determined to see this through to some kind of ending. When summer heat began to break, she heard that Ethan had broken up. She went to find him half smiling, ready to comfort him, but he showed no sign of heartbreak whatsoever. "We parted on good terms," he said pleasantly, "completely mutual. There is nothing to hurt about." She relaxed just barely, and then a single offhand line cut the moment short. "Besides," he said, "even if I had been hurt, what would that be compared to what I went through over the past 2 years? You were there for all of it. No need to shed crocodile tears now. Lydia scrambled to explain herself, but he gave her no opening. Lydia, please stop performing for me. I do not have any appreciation left for your act. If you need an audience, go back home to Julian in your little circle. The words left her flushed and speechless. He pushed past her and walked toward the academic building without a backward glance. By now, Lydia had run out of ideas. After 99 attempts, none of which had moved him, she was truly at a loss. It was only with a friend's suggestion that she came up with something for the final try. For the 100th confession, she chose the small garden on campus. She arranged an enormous domino display spelling out the scene from the very first time they had met. She hung fairy lights from the treetops and planned to light candles throughout the garden at night. To bring him back to that beginning, she enlisted a small army of people and drew up dozens of contingency plans. This time, she was determined to make him understand that she had truly fallen for him from the very first moment, and that her remorse was just as real. Everything was in place. The time arrived. Ethan did not show up. Lydia completely unraveled. She drove frantically to every place she could think of, searching. At 9 o'clock, an alarm sounded. The dark garden flooded with light. Balloons rose into the air. Petals and feathers drifted down from above, and soft piano notes rippled through the trees. One by one, the dominoes began to fall, clack after clack, steady and relentless, one per second. After more than 10 minutes, the final piece fell, and every candle in the garden ignited at once. While Lydia stood there feeling every ounce of strength drained from her body, then her phone rang, an unknown international number. The moment she picked up, she recognized his voice. "I hear you arranged a 100th confession for tonight," Ethan said. "What a pity. I am back in China at the moment. My apologies." Lydia swallowed the pain and forced a light tone. "It is fine. I am already happy just to hear from you. If you are willing, I can always plan 101st. "No need for that," he said. "I am calling tonight to tell you 2 things. The first, a friendly reminder. It is winter and the air is dry. When you are done with your display, please blow out every candle. We would not want a fire." She looked up and saw a shower of dry leaves drifting slowly down around her. "The second thing," he said, "some good news. I am in a new relationship. This girlfriend is, if anything, a little more beautiful than the last. You can stop at 100. In Lydia's mind, those few sentences set off an avalanche. A piercing, searing pain shot through her forehead. The phone slid from her grip and cracked against a candlestick. Within moments, fire tore through the garden. She did not run. She did not call out. She stood there motionless, becoming part of the burning scene around her. By the time the night was over, every tree in the garden had been reduced to ash. The firefighters arrived in time to pull her out. She survived by a narrow margin, but the fire brought full accountability. 6 months of detention, deportation, and a permanent ban from returning to Europe. The moment she was released, she was taken directly to the airport and sent home. Months later, stepping out of the airport into summer sunlight, she saw Ethan walking out from a street corner, a beautiful woman's hand in his, warm and laughing and completely at ease. He noticed her, greeted her genuinely, and introduced the woman beside him without ceremony. "This is my girlfriend, Veronica. Long time no see." That was the moment Lydia finally understood. She had spent 2 years holding a mirror up to a man who was chasing her, never once looking at what she herself was doing to him. And by the time she finally turned the mirror around, he was already gone. Ethan had walked back into China with a suitcase full of gold awards and a life entirely his own, and not a single piece of it had anything left to do with her.